One of the things I wished I had when I was in music school was music theory from a guitar player's point of view instead of everything being for piano or for voice. So my goal today is to give you just that. In today's video, we're going to cover all of the essentials of music theory, including what they are, how they work, and when to apply them to your instrument. But first, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Troy Serson. It rhymes with person. I've been teaching guitar for over a decade, and I've helped hundreds of students from as young as 3 to as old as 77 not only learn how the guitar works, but also how to use music theory to unlock new levels of guitar playing. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's talk about the basics. I'm convinced that the reason the majority of people get stuck on music theory is because they skip the basics thinking they already had it. And the majority of music theory, believe it or not, is actually quite fun. But these basics are usually taught in a really dry way that's dragged out over months in a school curriculum, so I totally get it if you checked out at some point along the way. To make sure you have all of these down, I'm going to review the basics here, and I want you to know 2 things before we get started. Number 1, it's just vocab. All of the basics of music theory are just words that you need to memorize. It's not any deeper than that, so grab some flashcards or rewatch this part of the video to drill the concepts. And number 2, if you're absolutely certain that you already have these down, you can skip ahead using the timestamps. Before we dive into the first section, here's some basic vocab that you just need to memorize. Staff, clef, ledger lines, note durations, steps, accidentals. And for those of you who don't know, this down here is called tablature, or tab for short. This is a notation system dating back to the 13th or 14th century where people who played stringed fretted instruments like the lute would jot down where to put your fingers on the instruments so people could learn how to play songs faster. The numbers represent which fret to put your finger on when pressing down a note, and the lines are your guitar strings. In the 16th century, when the guitar made it over from Spain to Italy, tab aided in the spread of the guitar because it made it so easy for new musicians to pick up the guitar and start playing songs. Tab is an amazing thing if you're only talking to other guitar players. But as soon as you start trying to picture piano tab or drum tab or voice tab, you can start to see a problem arise. Standard notation was developed over the course of several centuries, starting in the 11th century, with the aim of being a universal system for reading notes across instruments, so that musicians would be able to communicate ideas with one another, and so that composers would learn one way of writing that would work for all the instruments. And here's the easiest way that I found for making standard notation make sense on the guitar. Step 1 is simply figuring out what the names of the notes are. This symbol right here is called a treble clef. Whatever line the circle of the treble clef goes around becomes G. Don't you think it kind of looks like a letter G if I keep going? The treble clef is most often drawn around the 4th line of the staff, but it doesn't have to be. Now, this G that's indicated by your treble clef is your open G string on the guitar. Notes higher up the staff are higher in pitch, and notes lower on the staff are lower in pitch. The note names go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then restart at A in a new octave. We'll talk about octaves in a little bit, so don't worry too much about that for now. Now, where I think a lot of people get stuck is you don't have to become a genius at reading these dots and sticks. But you do have to feel comfortable with where they are and what letter they are to continue. So there are 3 ways that I found to help practice this, and you only need one of them, but understanding all 3 will make you even faster at getting through this step. The first is a staple of elementary music school classes, and it's using the acronym SPACE-FACE, and every good boy deserves fudge. The second, and my personal favorite, is using face gubide. Face gubide, when drawn in a circle, is a circle of thirds. Thirds are a unit of measurement we can use to tell us the distance between notes. A second would be from the letter you're on to the next letter. A third is when you go from the letter you're on to 2 letters up. Let's say that we're going from F to A. F is 1, G is 2, and A is 3. If we're going from A to C, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. Back to the staff, the line notes are all a third apart, and the space notes are all a third apart. That means when you know where one of the notes is, you can use face gubide to move up and down the notes faster. The third system, which is what I did at first, and makes more sense to some guitarists, is what I call the brute force method. Usually this will involve having spent some time looking at reading the notes first so that you kind of know what the notes are. Then you go to a website or an app like this one, link in the description, and you take time to drill the note names. Start by practicing without ledger lines and see what your score is after answering 10. Your goal is to get your average time for 10 questions lower each time you do it. Within a few weeks of doing this once or twice a day, you'll know the note names no problem. The next step to reading the notes on the guitar is to find your anchor points. These are a couple of notes that we memorize in reference to where they exist on the guitar. The first 4 that we're going to learn are your open strings that don't need ledger lines: D, G, B, and E. To understand why we use anchor points, we're going to flip now to a picture of a fretboard and a piano. Each string on the guitar can be thought of like its own miniature piano where there are up to 25 different notes depending on how many frets you have. And the strings themselves are each a 4th apart except for G and B. A 4th is another type of interval like thirds, and it represents the distance of 5 frets or 5 keys on the piano. We'll go over intervals in more detail later, so don't worry about it too much at this moment. But the reason I bring it up now is the 5th fret on one string is the same as the open string below it. So the first thing to learn after those open strings is our first 5 frets. To learn the note names of the first 5 frets, we need to memorize one thing. There are no B sharps and no E sharps. Said another way, there are no C flats and no F flats. If your brain thinks in sharps, remember the sharps. And if your brain thinks in flats, remember the flats. From there, we just follow the musical alphabet up from the open note, up to the 5th fret on each string, making sure that we fill in one sharp or flat in between all of the other letters. The aim is to be able to fill in this picture in under 2 minutes at home. And if you want printable copies of this grid for practice, there's a free download in the description. Once you know the notes in the first 5 frets, the thing to do to practice them is to practice them. The trick to this practice is to deliberately choose music that you do not know. Otherwise, your ear might fill in the gaps for you. I got this next tip from a David Russell podcast. A great way to practice what we're talking about is to use beginner violin repertoire and to attempt to sight read it. Yes, it'll be really uncomfortable at first, but try it without a metronome, and then when it's feeling easier, set a metronome really slowly to give yourself some grace. Somewhere around like, say, 40 beats per minute. If you need extra help, try shading in the open strings with the colors of the rainbow like what you're seeing on the screen. And if you make a point of doing this for 5 minutes a day, you will get better at reading music, I promise. If you're enjoying my teaching style and want to be met exactly where you're at as a student, learn your favorite songs without judgment, and have fun even when it's challenging, sign up for a trial lesson with me by heading to troyserson.com/sign-up or clicking the same link in the description of this video. Now, I have a confession to make. I used to be garbage at rhythm. The thing that fixed it for me was a drummer I used to play with yelling, "Play like this," and doing this in my face while we were in practice sessions. Lovingly, of course. But what I figured out as a guitar teacher is that failures in rhythm are usually one of two things. One of them is not understanding what the elements of rhythm are, and two is not understanding how to do those elements on your instrument. Starting with the first one, there are 7 concepts I think of when I think about rhythm. Let's learn all of them real quick so we can get back to doing them on our guitars. Music is divided up into evenly timed spaces by vertical lines. These evenly divided up spaces in the music are called measures. The top number of the time signature tells you how many beats are in each measure, and the bottom number tells you what kind of note duration the beats are made of. Here's a quick reference for what type of notes to use depending on the bottom number of the time signature. Meter is how we decide which notes are played hard or soft in the music. The order of hard and soft notes is called an accent pattern. Different time signatures have different accent patterns. So common ones to be aware of are, if we were counting in 3/4 time, we would go strong, weak, weak, 1, 2, 3, strong, weak, weak. If we're counting in 4/4 time, we would go strong, weak, medium, weak, strong, weak, medium, weak. And if we're in 6/8 or 6/4, we would go strong, weak, weak, medium, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, medium, weak. The speed of the music is set by the tempo. Tempo is the Italian word for time, and it's measured in beats per minute. If a piece of music is 60 beats per minute, that means that there is 1 beat per second. If it's 120 beats per minute, that means that there are 2 beats per second. You could figure out the beats per minute for a song that you're working on by tapping out the beat and counting how many times you tap in a 1 minute period, or you could use a metronome and match the click of the metronome to the speed of the music, then making a note of what the beats per minute is reading on the metronome. Subdivision is the practice of dividing up a measure of music by beats to help with feeling where the beat of the music is as you play different groups of notes, and a syncopation is what we call a collection of notes where the meter is momentarily interrupted. This interruption of meter is very common in dance music, where it's often better to learn the rhythm of that type of dance instead of the meter of the time signature to get the feel correct. Here are some of my favorite dance rhythms as an example: reggaeton, waltz, bossa nova, tango. Okay, so the hard truth is, now that you know these things, the how you work on them is probably not something you're going to like. It's a slow, intentional process that, if you can commit to it, we will get you the results you're after. But just remember to be patient with yourself. Improving at measures, time signatures, and understanding the beat simply requires you looking at the music you're playing. Eventually you'll be able to intuit all of these elements from listening to a song, because at the end of the day, music theory is about pattern recognition. But until you've practiced these elements, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Say the piece of music we're working on looks like this. We can see the measures in the time signature. And let's say the part that you're stuck on is the rhythm of this section here. Because we have the type of beats in the time signature, we can subdivide the measures, giving us smaller rhythm groups to practice. After you can get a feel of all of these groups of notes at a slow tempo, practice speeding up the hands gradually and slowly. Once this is going at a speed that you want to play the song at, switch back to your instrument and slowly play the sequence in the rhythm of where you started with your hands. If the issue is something like your pick getting caught on the strings with the orders of ups and downs you're doing with your pick, try this out. Take the note groups and double them up until they're the beat of the music and 1 note value faster. Write out numbers under where the beats would go if this was how the music was written. Notes that fall on the beat, which is where we put the numbers, get a downstrum. Any notes that fall between the beat get an upstrum. And that's your strumming pattern. If the issue is something like not being able to feel when to play with your thumb versus when to play with your fingers, like say in a bossa nova, try this out. Start by listening to this type of music only for the next week to immerse yourself in how the music sounds and feels. Kind of like traveling to a country where they only speak the language that you're learning. Then, try this. pick 5 songs that you want to learn in this style. See if there's a pattern to how the rhythms are played, and then start with that as your bass picking pattern before trying to do anything fancier. If that means you have to simplify the song that you're learning, that's okay. It's better to have a simplified version of a song with a correct rhythm than a complex version of the song with the wrong rhythm. Music by definition is organized sound. And if it's not organized, it's just sound. There are several other things that could go wrong with rhythm, so my third tried and true way to troubleshoot this, and I know it's going to make some of you uncomfortable, so brace yourself, is to film yourself playing the thing that's going wrong. And look, it's not to show anyone else, but it's for you to watch so that you can put your teacher hat on and you can identify the thing that's going wrong in what you're playing. Then, try fixing that one thing. And if you can't, then consider reaching out to a guitar teacher like myself to help you solve the problem. A lot of people, especially guitar players, tend to overthink scales. Mostly because people on the internet talk about what they are and skip over the part where we talk about what to do with them. Today, I will have to tell you what they are first, but then I'm going to show you what to do with them, so stay with me, okay? Since you watched the earlier part of the video, you're now prepared to learn major scales, the 3 types of minor scales, how to use your major scales to unlock all of your minor scales, scale degrees and their fancy names, key signatures, and the shortcut for learning all of your key signatures like the back of your hand. A scale is a series of notes. This can be any series of notes, and the different series of notes have different names. Today we're going to talk about major and minor scales, since the explanations for all of the other ones tend to be based off of the major and the minor scales in English-speaking countries. Earlier in the video, I mentioned something called whole steps and half steps. A half step is the distance from the note you're on to the next note. Say from your 4th fret to your 5th fret, or from G sharp to A. A whole step is from the note that you're on to the fret after the next note. Say from your 4th fret to your 6th fret, or from A flat to B flat. The rules for major scales are this. You need 1 note for each letter of the musical alphabet, and you need to use this specific sequence of whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. If we start on C, the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. No sharps or flats. This is why you'll see in basic music theory programs that most things start off in C major. Each note of a major scale has something called a scale degree. In most cases, you can think of this as just numbering the notes from 1 to 7. But each of them also has its formal, fancy-pants name, which are shown on the screen. Tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading note if it's a half step from the tonic, and subtonic if it's a whole step from the tonic. If we take the notes of a major scale and start on scale degree 6, this resulting natural minor scale is said to be the relative minor. This sharing of the same notes is what makes them relative to one another. Since the natural minor has the same notes as the major scale, it's the easiest place to start for wrapping your head around minor scales. In a moment, we'll talk about the pattern for figuring all of these out, but first, how do you play your scales on the guitar? There are 4 steps to mastering your scales on the guitar, but before you start doing those steps, the reason why we learn scales on the guitar is to teach our hands and our ears where the different combinations of notes exist within a key. If you're playing popular music, the more you practice playing in certain keys, the better you'll be able to solo in that key because your ears will hear the chords and your hands will just magically understand where to play. And if you're playing formal styles of music, the more you practice playing in a certain key, the better you'll get at reading the music, so you'll be able to learn new songs faster, take in new information more accurately, and even be able to sight read faster. The first of the 4 steps to scale mastery is learning open position shapes. This means learning to play a scale on the first couple of frets using as many open strings as possible. These also double as a way of teaching your brain the names of the notes on the guitar, so that when you see them in the music, you'll be able to read them faster. There's only one way to play C major in this position on the guitar, but in say G major, you can play it 2 different ways in open position. At a stretch, A minor can be played in 2 ways in open position, but we're going to stick with 1 way for now. When picking which fingers to use to play these scales, use finger 1 on the 1s, 2 on the 2s, 3 on the 3s, and 4 on the 4s. Now, outside of the natural minor scale, there are 2 commonly used forms of the minor scale: the harmonic minor and the melodic minor. The idea behind the harmonic minor is to raise the 7th scale degree of the natural minor scale to change it from a subtonic to a leading note. This leading note tone gives more pull to the sound, making it clearer to the listener that they're hearing something in the key of A minor. Personally, this is my favorite form of the minor scale, but maybe that's because I grew up listening to metal and a lot of metal has this tone in it. The other form of the minor scale is the melodic minor scale, and the reason behind it is this. The music theory people agreed with the idea that having the 7th scale degree raised in the harmonic minor scale was a good idea. It created more harmonic pull than the natural minor scale, making people think that we were in the key of A minor. But what they didn't like is that there was a step and a half between scale degree 6 and scale degree 7. Their solution was to raise scale degree 6 as well to fix the problem. But in my opinion, curveball, they only raised scale degree 6 and 7 when it was going up. Their logic is that the only time they needed to create this harmonic pull was on the way up, but this can cause some confusion when playing it on the instrument. So start by learning your natural and your harmonic minor scale, since those are the same going up as they are down. Then add in the melodic minor scale to your practice as well. Now there's a ton to know about scales, so let me give you a shortcut. Let's say that we're in the key of E major. We need one note for each letter from E to E, and we need it to conform to that whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half pattern. So we'll raise F, C, G, and D to F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. And there's a reason I did them in that order instead of F, G, C, and D. This acronym is part of my shortcut for every major and minor scale, and it goes Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Or, as a jazz musician taught me, empties bottles. The order that sharps get added to a key starts at F, and the order that flats get added to the key starts at B. The letters of this acronym are each a fifth apart, which when placed on a circle, creates a circle of fifths. If we put C at the top of the circle, spelling the acronym forward and clockwise around the circle until we hit C sharp, this tells us the order of the keys with sharps in them. And going counterclockwise around the circle and the opposite direction on the acronym tells us the order of keys with flat. How many sharps or flats are added to each key looks like this. In the key of A major, there are 3 sharps, and those sharps are F, C, and G. In the key of A flat major, there are 4 flats, and they are B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. If you draw this circle out again but start with A at the top, it will tell you all of your natural minor keys. And here's a pro tip. Memorize these 2 circles and this acronym, and if you're taking an AP theory exam, what you want to do is draw these 2 circles at the top of your exam. In case you panic mid-exam and forget one of your keys, you'll be able to flip back and reference it. And if you'd like to learn more about how to play scales than I have time to cover in this video, I've put together a practice guide that'll teach you the core techniques for the guitar in under 10 minutes a day, link in the description. And to be completely transparent with you, my goal with making this video is this. I want you to have a one-stop shop for learning technique and theory concepts for the guitar, and if you're struggling with staying accountable to your musical goals, like keeping up with practicing or progressing into harder pieces of music, that you'll reach out to me for us to work together. If this video answered one or more questions about theory for you, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it with one of your musician friends to help them out too. Thank you so much.